The first time the orc princess Grala saw the human, he was on his knees in mud. Not in supplication, she knew what begging looked like. The man knelt because a wagon wheel had snapped in the rutted road outside the market gate and he dropped beside it as if the world had narrowed to a single broken spoke. Around him, merchants shouted, horses stamped, and the guards of Grimjaw hold laughed the way orcs laughed when something else was struggling. The human didn't laugh back. He didn't glare either. He simply took off his cloak, folded it with absurd care, and placed it on a dry stone as if it mattered. Then he rolled up his sleeves. Grala leaned forward on the balcony of the gatehouse, tusks catching the cold light. She had come only because her mother, the Queen Magra of Grimjaw, insisted she learn what the world smells like beyond court incense. The world, it turned out, smelled like wet straw and sweat and iron. It smelled like a place where humans came with their heads bowed and their papers stamped and their eyes down. This one didn't keep his eyes down. He glanced up once briefly as if he'd felt her gaze land like a thrown knife, and the look he gave was not fear. It was recognition, not of her exactly. Not princess the way people recognized a title. More like a soldier recognizing another soldier across a field in the split second before battle explains everything. Grala's chest tightened for no sensible reason. Below, the merchant's boy wailed, "We'll be late, they'll fine us, hold." The human's voice carried, calm as a pond under ice. "If you force it, you'll crack the axle too, then you'll pay in weeks, not minutes." One of the orc guards swaggered closer, huge and bored. "Human," he rumbled, "your wheel is dead, pay toll and crawl back where you came from." The human didn't move away. He slid a wedge under the wagon frame, lifted with his shoulder, and the whole weight rose a finger width. Not because he was the strongest creature in the yard, he was, because he knew where to put the strength he had. He turned his head to the guard. "If you want toll, ask. If you want a show, buy a ticket." Laughter burst from the merchants, half shocked, half delighted. Orc guards shifted, surprised as if a goat had spoken. Grala's lips parted, bold, insolent, alive. She straightened, feeling the old boredom peel off her like a shed hide. In court, every word was measured. Every compliment was a chain. Every man who looked at her looked through her, at her tusks, her crown, her inheritance. But this human, he looked as if he saw the shape of a problem and wanted to fix it, and that was somehow rarer than jewels. Beside her, Queen Magra clicked her tongue. "Humans are clever with small things, knots, ledgers, lies." "He's clever with a big thing," Grala said, surprising herself with the heat in her voice. Her mother's gaze sharpened. "You're staring." "I'm deciding," Grala replied, because she was an orc princess and she refused to pretend she was. Down below, the human slid a pin free, turned the damaged wheel, and began removing the broken spoke with tools that looked too clean for this road. He worked quickly, efficiently, no wasted motion. Grala's fingers tightened on the balcony stone. "I want that human, mother," she said. Silence fell like a blade dropping into sand. The guards below didn't hear, distance spared them, but the courtiers on the balcony did. A handful of advisors shifted as though struck. Queen Magra's expression went still, then dangerous. "You want a human," Magra said, slow. "As what? A pet, a jester, a lesson in disappointment?" Grala turned her head and met her mother's eyes. Orcs didn't blink first in the hold. "As mine," she said. "As husband if it pleases me, as ally if it doesn't." A thin, bitter smile appeared on the queen's mouth. "You speak like you own the world." "I will," Grala said, "one day." Her mother's gaze flicked back to the yard where the human had finished removing the spoke. He held it up, inspected the break, then reached into his satchel for a replacement, already cut, already measured, already carried. Queen Magra's brow furrowed. "He came prepared." "He came expecting trouble," Grala murmured. "That's different." Magra leaned closer, voice low enough to be private. "Do you know his name?" Grala watched the human slide the new spoke into place. "Not yet. And you still want him." Grala bared her tusks in something that was not quite a smile. "I want what I want." The queen stared a beat longer, then exhaled through her nose. "Fine, if you insist on making your life complicated, you will do it properly." She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. A herald stepped forward. "Bring him," Queen Magra commanded. "Respectfully, I'm not in the mood for blood before lunch." The herald hurried off. Below, the human tightened the last bolt. The wagon rolled. The merchant boy's wail turned into laughter. The human stood, brushed mud from his hands, and reached for his neatly folded cloak. That was when the herald approached with a posture that said, "You're being summoned, and you don't get to refuse." The human looked up at the gatehouse balcony. His eyes found Grala immediately, as if he'd never lost the thread. He didn't bow. He tilted his head just slightly, the way someone might greet an equal. Gralla felt the court behind her tense, waiting for her fury, waiting for her to prove she was a princess by punishing him. Instead, she smiled, sharp and pleased, and her mother's advisors looked as if the sun had risen in the wrong direction. Minutes later, the human stood in the audience chamber of Grimjaw Hold, where the stones were black and the banners were red and the air tasted faintly of smoke even in peace. He was cleaner now, someone had been kind enough to offer water. He had refused perfumed oils, which amused Gralla more than it should have. He wore travel clothes, dark trousers, a simple shirt, boots scuffed by honest road. No jewelry, no crest. And yet he carried himself like someone who had once worn a crown and chose not to. Queen Magra sat on the high seat carved from a single slab of volcanic rock. Gralla stood at her right where air stood. The court watched with the hungry stillness of wolves before a test. The human's gaze moved across the room with measured calm. He took in the guards, the advisors, the weapons on display, the queen, the princess. He did not fidget, he did not shrink. Finally, Queen Magra spoke. Name. The human's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. They call me Cale of Greyford, he said. Cale, Gralla liked the sound, short, like a blade drawn halfway. And what do you do, Cale of Greyford? Magra asked. I fix what breaks, Cale said. Wheels, doors, sometimes people. A murmur went through the court. One advisor snorted. A healer? Cale's eyes shifted to the advisor. No, healers mend flesh. I mend decisions that cause flesh to break. That earned a few dark laughs. Orcs respected truth even when it cut. Queen Magra leaned forward. My daughter says she wants you. Explain why you should not be thrown from the walls for presumption. Cale's gaze returned to Gralla. I didn't presume, he said. She did. The court sucked in air. Gralla felt her heart kick, not fear. She had never been afraid of a man's words, but there was something electrifying about a human who did not fold. Queen Magra's mouth tightened. Careful. Cale inclined his head a fraction. Always. Gralla stepped forward. You're not afraid, she said. I know what fear tastes like, Cale replied. This isn't it. She circled him like an assessing wolf. He didn't track her with his head, only with his eyes, calm, alert, patient. He smelled faintly of metal and wood shavings and road dust, honest smells. What's your price? She asked bluntly because diplomacy bored her. A few courtiers choked. Cale's brows lifted. For what? For being mine, Gralla said, and she enjoyed the chaos it caused. Cale's gaze sharpened. I'm not a sword you buy and hang on your wall. I'd use you, Gralla said, not hang you. Then don't ask my price, he said. Ask my terms. Gralla stopped. Orcs respected terms, deals, blood oaths. She looked at her mother. Queen Magra watched with a predator's focus. Speak, the queen told Cale. What terms do you dare offer an orc princess? Cale took a breath. If I stay, he said, I stay by choice. I won't be caged. I won't be used as a threat against my people, and I won't be made into a spectacle. One advisor sneered. You bargain like you have leverage. Cale turned to the advisor, voice mild. If I didn't have leverage, you wouldn't be listening. Gralla's laugh escaped before she could stop it, loud and delighted. The court stared at her as if she'd just thrown a goblet at the queen. Queen Magra's eyes narrowed, but there was something like amusement in them too, buried deep. And what do you offer in return? Magra asked. Cale looked at Gralla again. Truth, he said, skill and my willingness to stand where others won't. Pretty words, Magra said. You could be a spy, a thief, a runaway. I could, Cale agreed. The queen's lips curled. And are you? Cale held her gaze. No. It wasn't the denial that struck Gralla. It was the way he said it, like a man who had lied so rarely he didn't need practice. Queen Magra sat back. My daughter is stubborn, she said. If I deny her, she'll find you anyway, and then I'll have to clean up the mess, so I'll allow this carefully. A ripple of surprise. Gralla's grin widened. Magra lifted a finger. A trial, 3 days. You will stay as guest, not property. You will prove you are what you say. If you fail, you leave. If you betray us, you die. Cale nodded once. Fair. Gralla stepped closer, so close she could see the faint scar along his jawline, pale against tan skin. And if you succeed? She asked. Cale's gaze dropped to her tusks, then returned to her eyes. Then we decide, he said, together. That word together hit her harder than any flattery. For 3 days, Grimjaw Hold became a storm contained in stone. Word traveled fast. The princess had dragged a human into court and refused to let go. Orc warriors took turns coming to stare at him, to challenge him, to test him. They expected him to crack, to plead, to be clever only with words. Cale met them with something different. When a captain demanded he spar, Cale didn't ask for a sword. He asked for a staff. He let the captain swing heavy and wild, then used timing and angles, small, efficient movements to redirect force instead of matching it. He left the captain panting and blinking, not wounded but humbled. When a smith mocked his soft hands, Kale rolled up his sleeves, took a hammer, and struck iron with a rhythm that made the forge fall quiet. Not stronger than the orcs, never stronger but precise. Every blow where it needed to be. When an advisor tried to trick him with a contract full of hidden clauses, Kale read it, tore it in half, and said, "If you want a deal, don't start with a lie." Gralla watched all of it from the edge of the room, feeling something inside her reorder itself. This wasn't a human who survived by pleasing. This was a human who survived by refusing to be shaped. On the second night, she found him on the outer wall alone, looking at the dark line of the forest beyond. The wind tugged at his hair. He didn't turn until she spoke. "You could have left," Gralla said. "You still can." Kale's eyes stayed on the forest. "I don't run from a choice I made." "What did you make it for?" she asked. "Me." He finally looked at her. Partly, he admitted, that honesty should have been easy. Instead, it felt like standing too close to a fire. "And the other part?" Gralla asked. Kale's jaw tightened. "Because something is coming," he said quietly. "And if I'm in the wrong place when it arrives, people die." Gralla's hand went to the dagger at her hip by instinct. "What's coming?" Kale's gaze flicked to the tree line. "Raiders," he said. "Not orc, not human, the kind that burn villages for practice and sell children by weight." Gralla's blood went cold. "We would know." "You would," Kale said, "if you looked where they aren't supposed to be." She studied his face. "How do you know?" For the first time, Kale hesitated, not from fear, something else. Something like a gate held shut. "I've seen their marks," he said finally. "I've followed their trails." "And lived," Gralla said. Kale's mouth twitched. "I'm difficult to kill." Gralla snorted, but the sound was shaky. "That's not an answer." Kale met her gaze. "It's the only one I can give you tonight." Gralla should have pressed. She was a princess. She took answers, but she recognized the shape of a vow when she saw one. Whatever he was hiding, it wasn't petty. "Then tell me this," she said. "If raiders come, do you stand with us?" Kale's voice was steady. "If they come," he said, "I stand between them and your people." Gralla's throat tightened. "Why?" Kale looked away again, back to the forest. "Because that's what a king should do," he said softly. The word hung in the wind. Gralla's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Kale blinked, as if realizing he'd spoken too much. "Nothing," he said. Gralla stepped closer. "You said king." Kale's gaze met hers, and for a heartbeat she saw something behind it: steel grief, a weight too heavy for a traveler's shoulders. Before she could speak again, a horn sounded from the lower yard, one long blast, then another. Alarm! Gralla spun toward the stairwell, tusks bared. "That's not a drill." Kale was already moving, cloak snatched, boots pounding stone. "Where is your commander?" he asked over his shoulder. "In the barracks," Gralla snapped. "Get him to the gate," Kale said. "Now." Gralla bristled at being ordered, but the urgency in his voice was a knife she couldn't ignore. They reached the yard to chaos, guards shouting, torches flaring, riders swinging into saddles. A scout stumbled through the gate, bleeding from the shoulder, eyes wide. "They're coming," the scout gasped. "From the eastern road, not a warband," he coughed. "A pack." Queen Magra descended the steps of the high hall, armor already strapped on as if she slept in it. Her eyes landed on Kale. "You said nothing," Magra growled. Kale's jaw tightened. "I didn't know you'd listen," he said. Magra's tusks flashed. "I listened to threats." The scout gripped the queen's arm. "They fly black flags," he rasped. "No crest, no honor." Queen Magra turned to her captain. "Close the outer gate, archers on the wall, boiling oil ready." Gralla reached for her own helm, then paused as Kale stepped to her side. "Your walls will hold," Kale said, "but they won't stop what comes after." Magra's eyes narrowed. "Speak clearly, human." Kale's gaze cut toward the eastern road. "They're not here for loot," he said. "They're here for someone." Gralla's skin prickled. "Who?" Kale looked at her, and the answer sat in the space between them like a falling stone. Gralla's stomach clenched. "Me." Kale's voice was low. "Not just you," he said. "The treaty, the hold, the balance. If they can take you, they can make your mother choose between war and humiliation." Queen Magra's hand went to her sword. "How do you know their intent?" Kale's eyes were grim. "Because I've been running from their net for weeks," he said, "and because they don't miss what they want twice." The eastern horizon flared with torchlight. The raiders came like a moving shadow, horses dark, armor mismatched, faces masked with bone and cloth. Their banner was black, stitched with a crude white handprint, as if someone had slapped the fabric in blood and dared the world to answer. Orc archers loosed arrows, and the first riders fell, but more surged forward. They didn't roar battle cries. They didn't taunt, they moved like they had done this 100 times, like the act of taking was routine. Kale stood beside Gralla on the wall, eyes tracking patterns. He spoke in clipped bursts. "Left flank too quiet, they're probing. Rear group carrying hooks, they want the wall." Those four see their saddlebags fire. Gralla relayed orders. Orcs listened, reluctant at first, then eagerly when his predictions hit true. A hook caught the stone. A raider began climbing. Gralla leaned over and brought her axe down, splitting fingers. The raider screamed and fell. More hooks flew, boiling oil poured. The air filled with smoke, screams, and the thunder of hooves. Then, like a cruel joke, the black flag split and a figure rode forward alone, slow and unhurried, as if approaching a feast. He wore a helm shaped like a wolf skull. A cape of stitched hides dragged behind him. He lifted a hand, and the raiders paused as if pulled on a leash. Even from the wall, Gralla felt the weight of his presence, an authority that didn't need a crown. Kale's body went rigid. Gralla glanced at him. "You know him." Kale's voice was almost a whisper. "Warlord Varric the White Hand," he said. "The White Hand." The warlord raised his helm slightly, as if acknowledging the wall like an old acquaintance. His voice carried, amplified by some cruel trick of the valley. "Grimjaw," he called, "send me the princess, and I leave your stones standing." Queen Magra stepped to the parapet, fury blazing. "I send you nothing but arrows." Varric chuckled. "Brave," he said, "predictable." His gaze shifted, hunting, and landed on Gralla. "Ah," he purred, "there you are." Gralla lifted her chin, refusing to give him the flinch he wanted. Then Varric's gaze slid to Kale. Even from this distance, Gralla saw something change, a stillness, a recognition. Varric's laughter died. "Well," Varric said slowly, voice sharpening, "that's a surprise." Kale leaned forward, hands gripping stone. "Go away," he called down, voice carrying like steel. Varric tilted his head. "You left without saying goodbye," he called back. "Your father will be disappointed." Gralla's heart slammed. Queen Magra's head snapped toward Kale. "Your father?" Kale didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Varric, as if the warlord was the only thing keeping the world from falling apart. Varric spread his hands. "The king sends his regards," he called. "The feared one. The man who burned a dozen keeps to end a single rebellion." A murmur rose on the wall, fear and disbelief tangled together. Gralla's breath hitched. The stories every orc child heard about the human king across the mountains, the one who united fractured provinces with fire and mercy, who ended wars by arriving in person, who wore a crown like a threat. The name tasted like legend. Kale's jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. Queen Magra's voice was lethal. "Human," she said, "what have you brought to my gate?" Kale finally turned. His eyes met hers, raw, honest, tired. "I didn't bring him," Kale said. "He brought himself. But yes, my father is King Aldrin of Asheville." The court's whisper became a wave. Gralla's mind spun. The human traveler, the wheel fixer, the calm voice, a prince, not just any prince. The son of the king everyone feared. And she had pointed at him from a balcony like she was choosing a dessert. "I didn't know," Gralla said, and for once her voice lacked certainty. Kale's mouth twisted. "That's why I didn't wear a crest." Queen Magra drew her sword with a slow, deliberate sound. "If you lied to my daughter, I didn't," Kale snapped, sudden anger flaring. "I told you what mattered. I fix what breaks. I stand where others won't, and right now what's breaking is your gate." Below, Varric laughed again, delighted by the revelation. "Do you see?" he called up. "A prince in your hold." Eyes wrapped in flesh. Gralla's hands tightened on her axe. Rage rose hot and clean. "You want me?" she shouted down. "Come take me." Varric's wolf skull helm angled. "I will," he said softly. He raised his hand. The raiders moved not toward the gate, but away, fanning outward. At first it looked like retreat, then the ground shook. From the tree line to the north, something massive lumbered forward, an ogre chained and prodded, its skin scarred with burns. It carried a battering ram the size of a tree. Orc archers cursed and loosed, but arrows stuck like thorns. Queen Magra swore. "Oil now." Kale grabbed Gralla's arm. "Not enough," he said. "They'll breach." "Then we kill them inside," Gralla growled. Kale's eyes flicked across the yard below where orc warriors gathered, bracing for impact. He made a decision so fast it looked like instinct. "Open the inner gate," he told the captain. The captain stared. "That's madness," Kale's voice cut through. "Open it, or you'll fight in a choke point they control. Let them think you're afraid, let them rush." Queen Magra's gaze pinned Kale. "Why should I trust the son of a feared king who hid his name in my walls?" Kale met her eyes. "Because I'm the one who knows how they hunt," he said, "and because if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have warned you." Queen Magra held the stare for a heartbeat, then she barked, "Do it." The inner gate creaked open. Below, the ogre slammed the ram into the outer gate. Wood splintered, iron bands groaned, orcs braced, snarling. Another slam. The gate burst inward in a spray of broken timber. Raiders poured through, screaming, now tasting victory. And then they hit the open space of the yard where orc warriors waited, not in a tight line but spread wide like a net. Kale shouted commands short, sharp in the human tongue and the orc one switching without thinking. Orcs moved where he pointed, sealing gaps, cutting off escape routes. Grala leapt down from the wall into the yard, landing hard, axe already swinging. She crashed into the first raider, split his shield, drove him back. The fight became a storm of metal and breath. Kale fought too, not with a heavy blade like an orc, but with a short sword and a dagger, moving like water through cracks. He didn't waste strength, he didn't posture, he ended threats and kept moving. Varric rode through the broken gate, laughing, and headed straight for Grala. Of course he did. Grala saw him coming, felt the pull of it like fate trying to write its own ending. She planted her feet, axe raised. Varric's horse reared. Varric swung a hooked blade toward her neck. Grala met it with her axe haft, sparks flying. The force jolted her arms to the bone. Varric's voice was intimate through the chaos. "Princess," he purred, "your mother's walls are strong, but your body is softer." Grala snarled and drove her tusks forward, head-butting his wolf skull helm. The impact rattled her skull, but she felt him flinch. Then his hook caught the edge of her armor and yanked her off balance. She stumbled, Varric's blade flashed. Kale appeared impossible, sudden intercepting the strike with his own sword. Steel screamed. Kale's face was a mask of fury Grala hadn't seen before. "Touch her," Kale hissed, "and I'll take your hands." Varric laughed, delighted. "Ah, Prince," he said, "playing hero, does she know what your father truly is?" Kale's jaw tightened. "She doesn't need to," he said. "She knows what I am." Varric shoved, forcing Kale back. "You ran from your crown," he taunted. "You ran from Asheville. You ran from the king's shadow." Kale's eyes flickered pain, anger, something like old grief. Grala steadied herself. "Enough talking," she growled and swung her axe at Varric's horse. The blade bit, the horse screamed and collapsed. Varric rolled free, agile as a snake, landing in a crouch. He rose slowly, wolf skull helm tilting. "Good," he said. "Show me the teeth." He lunged for Grala again. This time she and Kale moved together without planning, Grala's brute force, Kale's precision. She drove Varric back with heavy swings. Kale slipped in, cutting at joints, disrupting balance. Varric was skilled, too skilled. Each time Grala thought she had him, he slid away like smoke. Then Varric's hook caught Kale's sleeve and yanked him forward. Varric's blade rose toward Kale's throat. Grala roared, a sound that ripped from her chest like thunder, and threw herself between them, taking the strike across her shoulder guard. Metal scraped, pain flashed hot. Kale's eyes widened. "Grala," she gritted her tusks. "Orcs don't let what's theirs get taken," she snarled. Kale's gaze locked on hers, and in that heartbeat the trial ended, not by decree, by blood. Kale moved fast, vicious. His dagger slammed into Varric's wrist, pinning it to the broken gate beam. Varric hissed, tried to pull free. Kale leaned close, voice like winter. "Here's my terms," he said. "You leave or you die." Varric's eyes burned behind the helm. "Your father will come," he spat. "And when he does, he'll burn this hold to ash just to remind the world who kneels." Kale's face tightened, and for a moment Grala saw the truth in the words, not certainty but possibility. Kings did terrible things to keep crowns steady. Kale twisted the dagger. Varric screamed. "You don't know him," Kale said, voice breaking with rage. "And you don't know me." Grala stepped in, grabbed the edge of Varric's wolf skull helm, and tore it off with a brutal jerk. The man beneath was older than she expected, scarred, smiling through blood. Grala raised her axe. Varric laughed, then coughed. "Do it," he rasped. "Make me a martyr. The white hand doesn't die alone." Kale's breathing was harsh. He looked at Grala, then at the raiders still fighting. The yard was a slaughterhouse, but the orcs held. The raiders were losing. Kale made a choice. He yanked his dagger free, stepped back, and said, "Leave," he told Varric. "Go back to whoever hired you. Tell them they failed." Varric's smile widened, wicked. "Mercy," he whispered. "From the king's son." Kale's eyes were cold. "Not mercy," he said. "A message." Queen Magra pushed through the fighters, sword dripping dark. She took in Grala's bleeding shoulder, Kale's rigid stance, Varric's sneer. Magra's gaze settled on Kale. "If you let him go," she said, "he'll return." Kale nodded once. "Yes," he said, "and when he does, he'll lead us to the net's center." Queen Magra stared, then slowly she lowered her sword. "Bold," she murmured. "Stupid, but bold." Grala pressed a hand to her shoulder, feeling warm blood seep between fingers. She looked at Kale. "You're really his son," she said. Kale's expression softened just a little, like a clenched fist easing. "Yes," he admitted. "I ran because I didn't want to become him." Queen Magra's eyes narrowed. "And what is he?" Kale's voice was quiet. "A man who can protect a kingdom," he said, "and destroy one and sleep either way." The yard fell into a tense silence as the last raiders broke and fled, dragging their wounded. Varric staggered backward, grinning, then vanished into the smoke and splintered gate. After when the dead were counted and the fires stamped out, Grimjaw hold smelled like blood and wet ash. In the queen's chamber, healers bound Grala's shoulder. She refused the strong pain draft. Orcs didn't dull their senses in a time like this. Kale stood near the door, hands stained, face tight. He looked like a man waiting for punishment. Queen Magra dismissed the healers with a wave. When the room was empty, she studied Kale like a blade she hadn't decided to keep. My daughter declared she wanted you, Magra said. Now I learn you are the son of a king whose name makes my advisors sweat. Do you understand what that means? Kale's jaw tightened. War, he said. Maybe, Magra agreed. Or leverage. Grala sat up, wincing. Mother, Queen Magra silenced her with a look. Then she turned back to Kale. Why did you come here? She demanded. Truth. Kale took a slow breath. Because my father wants peace, he said. He says he does anyway, but peace is another way to control a border. Queen Magra's eyes narrowed. And you? Kale's gaze shifted to Grala. I want peace that doesn't taste like chains, he said. And I want to stop the raiders before they start a war neither of our people survive. Grala's heartbeat steadied. This was bigger than desire. Bigger than court games, Queen Magra leaned forward. If you are truly his son, she said, you have a voice in his hall. Kale's throat worked. Yes. And if I accept you, Magra continued, I invite your father's shadow into my hold. Kale met her gaze, unflinching. Yes. Queen Magra's tusks showed in a grin that looked like a threat and an invitation all at once. Good, she said. Then listen carefully, Prince. Kale stiffened at the title. You will write to your father, Queen Magra said, and you will tell him this. Grimjaw hold does not kneel, we trade, we ally, we fight, but we do not bow. Kale nodded. And you, Magra added, eyes cutting to Grala, will stop choosing men like trophies. Grala bristled. I didn't, Queen Magra raised a finger. You did, she said, and it nearly got you stolen. But you also chose a man who stood in front of your throat, so perhaps your instincts aren't completely rotten. Grala's tusks curled in a grin despite herself. Queen Magra turned to Kale again. If you stay, she said, you stay as ally, not as prisoner, not as pet. You will earn every stone you stand on. Kale's eyes flickered, relief and something like hope. I can do that, he said. Queen Magra's gaze sharpened. And if your father marches on my hold, Kale's voice was steady, but his eyes were haunted. Then I stand in front of him too, he said, and I tell him he doesn't get to burn what I chose. Silence stretched, heavy with implications. Queen Magra leaned back. Fine, she said, as if granting a minor request. Stay and help us hunt your white hand. Kale bowed, not deeply, not submissive, but with respect. When the queen finally rose and left them, the chamber felt suddenly too large. Grala looked at Kale, watching him like she'd watched him in the yard, hands that fixed broken things, eyes that held storms. I wanted you, she said softly. Kale's mouth twitched. I noticed. Grala snorted, then winced. Don't mock me, she grumbled. I'm not, Kale said. He stepped closer, careful not to jostle her shoulder. You chose without knowing the story. That's rare. Is it? She asked. For humans, Kale said, they usually want a name first, a title, a promise. Grala's gaze lifted. And you? She asked. What do you want? Kale's eyes searched her face as if deciding whether to open a locked door. I want to be someone who can stand beside you, he said. Not behind you. Not above you, beside. That word again, beside, and Grala felt her chest tighten the same way it had on the balcony, only now it wasn't mystery, it was choice. She reached out, took his wrist, and pulled him close enough that he had to look at her fully. Then stay, she said, not because my mother permits it, not because your father fears it, stay because you said you don't run from choices. Kale's throat moved. And you, he asked, do you still want me? Grala bared her tusks in a grin that was half threat, half promise. More, she admitted, now that I know you're dangerous. Kale laughed, quiet, surprised. I'm not the dangerous one, he said. Grala's eyes gleamed. You're wrong, she said. You're dangerous in the way kings are dangerous. Kale's gaze sharpened. Don't make me a king, he warned. Grala's grip tightened. Then don't make me a queen who settles, she replied. For a long moment, they held each other's gaze in the smoky light of a hold that had just survived a siege. Outside, the broken gate lay in splinters. Beyond it, the eastern road disappeared into darkness where the white hand fled, carrying stories, carrying threats, carrying the promise of return. And far beyond the mountains, a powerful king sat on his throne, unaware that his son had been claimed by an orc princess with fire in her veins. And that the choice would soon force even the feared king to decide what kind of ruler he truly was. Grala released Kale's wrist slowly, like sealing a pact. Tomorrow, she said, you teach my warriors how you saw the hooks. Kale nodded. Tomorrow, he agreed. And after that, she added, leaning in close enough that her breath warmed his ear, we decide those terms you promised me. Kale's smile was small but real. Together, he said, Grala's heart answered like a drum, because wanting a human had been a whim. But keeping this one might change the world.